Today we are delighted to be joined by a very special guest, Julz Adeniran, 110-metre hurdler in the England senior national athletics team and double bucks champion.
Give us a real insight into what your training sessions are like, and how difficult, how much of a kind of solid training sessions you do.
Well, athletics, I'd say it was different to a lot of the team sports in that if I break down the year, it generally starts in October, and athletes will train for those 12 weeks, October, November and December, and there won't be any competitions during that period. It'll literally be grueling training. What the focus is during that period is to break yourself down, literally, to build yourself up back stronger, more technically proficient and fitter. And that process is super compensation. So you're literally pushing your body's limits over and over again, resting, letting your body obviously regenerate, better, stronger, faster. So a typical week for me in the winter would be a Monday 2.5 hour weight session. And the weights, they only get heavier and heavier and heavier as the weeks go on. And there is no let up. You can't be afraid of the pain. You can't be afraid basically because you have to keep pushing your limits. And when you're at your limit, you know about it. So disgorge findings, or vomit as we like to say, on the edge of the track is a weekly occurrence. Blood, sweat and tears. To be honest with you, it's a brutal sacrifice in terms of what you have to do to achieve, and I'm not even halfway there yet.
Yeah, sounds pretty horrendous, to be honest. I find athletics really interesting, particularly the sprint events, because obviously you're working so hard for 13 seconds, or if you're Usain Bolt, 9 seconds on the track. It's not like a football match or a tennis, where you've got over an hour, where you've got time to think about and concentrate on the match. Is there a process of breaking down the race into sections, and like in your training, do you specifically work on aspects that, because obviously it's tiny. I mean, it's like, 1 second must be is a massive part of the race, because you're looking to knock down hundreds all the time. Is there a kind of real analysis of how you should run the race and training, and you train towards that kind of thing? Yeah,
most certainly. You've hit the nail on the head. I mean, in the sprint events specifically, there is no room for error, and there is no reprieve if you make a mistake. If Wayne really misses a shot, he may have another chance. There is no room for error, and everything is down to the hundredths of a second. And I've lost races by a hundredth of a second, which equates to the width of a vest. And I've won races by that margin. So that's exactly it. It's not a case of literally running over 10 hurdles every single training session until I do it faster. You look at your event, you look at all the different segments, and you break each segment down and work on them individually to the minute details. There's so much detail in there. Today we did a session in preparation for Saturday, and we had a high-speed filming camera watching me get out the blocks. And the things my coaches are picking up, we're talking about sort of centimetre differences. And is my knee higher than my foot or my short leg? Is that causing this? We're looking for chain reactions. And especially in my event, hurdles are such a technical event. You're effectively trying to navigate these barriers with as little compromise of your sprint stride. So you're literally trying to sprint and then just literally navigate them rather than jumping. And I guess that's why it interests me so much. It is such a technical event, and you do really get into the gritty detail, which is cool. But as much detail as you go and as much science you want to apply, you can't get away from the hard work, the laps around the track, the lactic, the pain, the weights. It's a good mix, really.
It's really fascinating to go into that kind of analysis. And do you have a particular, because obviously running the 60 metres hurdles now, which is all about so much is on the start, do you have a particular part of your event that is a real strength of yours, or do you just not try and think about it? You just try and get everything right at the same time? Are you a fast starter, good over the hurdles, or is there any part of your race that you are particularly, extra specially good at, would you say?
To be honest with you, when I'm training and I don't want to get out of bed like everyone else, and I'm fighting that little voice in my head that says, duvet day would be so much better, stick on a DVD, or do you really want to do that, or back off? 3 runs will be okay, you don't need to see the 4th. I think, why am I doing this to myself? What is the goal? And I want to be the fastest ever, so I look at the world record, and that's the basis for calling yourself the fastest ever, and I train for that world record. And if you want to run a world record, or even run anywhere near it, you have to be completely perfect in every single aspect of the race. So I don't so much focus on my strengths. I look at my weaknesses and I try and turn them into strengths. I am a good starter, but break the world record, you've got to be a great starter. I'm a good finisher, but you need to be a great finisher. So, it's a lot of studying. It's looking at what, the current best in the world do, saying, okay, what are they doing that I'm not? A lot of studying and just working on all aspects, really. So I'm really looking to be the complete athlete. I don't want to be the best in Britain or the best in Europe. We really want to go to these Olympics and these Worlds and bring back gold medals.
What a fantastic ambition. And also, the mental side of sport is something that's talked about a lot at the moment, and you touched on there, obviously, sometimes you get up in the morning like everybody does and you don't want to go and train and stuff. How do you approach, like, just from a kind of a mental side of it, when you're doing these training session after training session after training session? Does it have to become like routine? Do you just have to sort of roll into the next session, and is it do you ever struggle with motivation? Like, you are human, of course. I mean, like the rest of us. So do you ever struggle with that kind of thing?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, it's easier at times than it is at others. I definitely, there's days I don't want to get out of bed, and I think if you look at other successful people in whatever sport or field, I think success definitely breeds success. And for example, I ran last weekend at the the UK Indoor Championships, and I ran personal best and got my first ever senior UK championships medal, and that it really lifted me up, and really going to give me some great motivation in this Easter training period. So I think when you've had some success, it definitely rolls on. But I've had times when I haven't. 2009, 2010, my second and third years of university, I had a horrific car crash in 2009 February. I missed the entire indoor season. I had dissertations. It was all really tough, and it's hardest to find that motivation when you haven't had that bit of success and what have you. But I think that on a day-to-day basis, the way I approach it, I take quite an interesting look at it. I did a session with Andy McCann, who's the Wales Rugby Football Association's sports psychologist, in the summer with one of my kind of affiliates, Red Bull. And he taught us, he introduced me to an acronym called BASE. It's quite an interesting theory that I do subscribe to. The B stands for strength of belief in yourself. The A stands for consistency of attitude. The S stands for depth of support. And the E stands for ability to execute. And that really is an acronym for success. Obviously, everybody that lines up on a line at a national or world or Olympic final is extremely talented and they have ability. So that's not an advantage at all. And it's that real consistency of attitude I think helps me in terms of, it's great, if you wake up on a Thursday, you really want to have the best session ever, but you have to keep that consistency to every single session. So I just try and focus on the process rather than the outcome. Obviously, everyone outside of me, all of my supporters, friends, family, those that care, everyone's, you're going to the Olympics. But I think the Olympics is really the outcome. And I can't afford to get lost and carried away with that. I focus on the process, and that's basically waking up every day and saying, right, can I train like an Olympic champion today, tomorrow? And that consistency of attitude is the easiest way I find to kind of keep up the necessary motivation.
Well, that's a really fascinating insight. Just talking about the hurdles as a whole, it's 110 metre hurdles as a whole. It's an event where we've got really good heritage. Obviously, Colin Jackson was world record holder, world champion, and recent success with Andy Turner being European Commonwealth champion, world bronze medalist, and Will Sharman as well being this sort of championship performer. Is that a real inspiration? That must be an inspiration for you, seeing our own British athletes really breaking barriers, especially someone like Turner when he's up against the 3 fastest runners of all time, coming away with a bronze medal. It must give you real hope that you can go and do some damage when you line up against these guys.
Yeah, most certainly. It definitely does. I think it definitely makes a difference. If you look at a lot of the British success stories in sport, they inspire a generation. I'm sure in 10 years' time we'll see some young divers performing at the top of their game, and people will be able to look back and go, hey, you know what? Tom Daly's success in the pool, that's a channel line. And it's shown to be the case in lots of different areas. I read a book recently by Matthew Syed called Bounce, and they looked at a lot of Russian tennis players, and they tracked it through sort of 30 years, and it definitely makes a difference. And me personally, definitely. I mean, I've trained with Andy before. I see Will train with Will Sharman when I train at Loughborough. And it definitely brings that human element, saying, they're human, they were running this time at this age, and it's definitely some inspiration for me, knowing that it is very possible. And I lined up this weekend at the Aviva Grand Prix, ranked, I think, about 15th out of 16th on paper, but you know, I'm not going to let that stop me. When you all line up, it's all equal. You're all running the same distance. So yeah, I definitely have a strong belief, as I say, the B of base, that I can go on to achieve these feats, and that they are realistic goals if I apply myself.
And I was listening to a really interesting interview of Martin Kieran actually yesterday, where he said that whenever he went to compete in a football match, he would believe, no matter if he's playing against Cantona or anybody like that, he was the best runner, that's you, of course, best footballer on the pitch. So when you line up against Liu Zhang and Robles, do you kind of almost need to put away the fact that they've run, you know, 12.9 or 12, even 12.8 at the world record, and just think, I'm going to do my own thing, doesn't matter what they do, I'm going to run as fast as I can run, and if I get it right, then I could potentially beat them or whatever? Is that just, you need to have that real kind of attitude like that?
Well, I think here's where you tread the fine line between confidence and arrogance. As I said, the B of base, you have to have an immense strength of belief, but that can cross over depending on the onlooker and the perspective of the observer. For example, Floyd Mayweather, he's the pound-for-pound best boxer in the world. And for those who are familiar with boxing, they'll know that he's quite famed for his out-of-the-ring antics, in terms he's very showy, he's very quick to declare he's the best ever, that, you know, and his statistics back that up. He's fought 42 professional fights, 42 wins, 42 tried, 42 failed. And I don't see that as him being cocky and arrogant, and, you know, I think it's not a British way of conducting yourself, but definitely that strength of belief. And whilst, you know, I appreciate that I haven't run the times Liu Zhang or David Robles have, the way I look at that is that they're simply at a different stage of development in their career. Had I put the 10,000 hours in of work that they have, I honestly believe that you know, I would be running those times. So at the moment they're running faster than me, but I couldn't stand here and tell you on record that they're better than me. They're at a different stage of development. I appreciate that. I know, you know, those kind of performances don't come easy. I think we're often tricked in thinking the opposite with the iceberg effect. You know, we see, you know, David Beckham, you know, curl a free kick into the top left-hand corner, and we think, wow, you know, I can never do that. But we don't see the 10,000 hours of practice that he spent, you know, bending them and missing them. So yeah, I'm not fazed by it, and I look at it as a massive challenge, and yeah, I can't wait. So
if you're, say, one of our runners, say you're Harry Akins-Arite, and you're lining up against Usain Bolt in the Olympic final, and if you're lining up against Roger Federer in the, say, the quarter-final of the US Open, you surely got to think, if I play my absolute best, I've got a chance to beat him, even though he's the greatest player of all time. Yep. You're lining up in the 100 metres or 110 metre hurdles against Usain Bolt, for example. You've got 9 seconds. You haven't run anywhere near as fast as him. How do you get past the fact that you are running against somebody like that? Like, how could you possibly think that you were going to beat them, for example, for Usain Bolt or someone going up against him? Even his closest competitor must be going, I'm not sure I can get him. Even Tyson Gay must feel like that a few times. So is that something that you have to really kind of, you know, I know we touched on it a little bit before, but just be in your own bubble and believe in yourself? Well,
before I insult any 100-metre runners out there, you know, I've got a lot of friends who are, you know, 100-metre runners. I'm just glad I'm not a sprinter at this day and age, if I'm honest with you. I don't run the 100 or 200, so it's not something I have to concern myself about dealing with the phenom that is Usain Bolt. So, you know, I couldn't answer that straight, but, I mean, listening to a lot of what Tyson Gay's, you know, he's perhaps the person who's most been asked that question, what are you going to do? I mean, the way he's addressed it is that you literally have to reconfigure your mind. And I think in sprinting and in athletics in general, where, you know, we're talking about really short efforts, really, you know, things that happen in a blink of an eye, it's definitely more, you know, as much mental as it is physical. So I guess you just have to reconfigure your mind and have that strong mental approach. I think, you know, that strong mental approach to be able to say, well, okay, that's happened now. I'm no longer training to run set 9.5. I want to run 9.4. And that, again, comes onto the strength of belief that we touched on. And if you can believe that, you can, you know, if you can conceive and believe it, then I reckon you can achieve it. So that's the tip I give out there. But in much the same with the hurdles, you know, the top 3 in the world at the moment, 2 of which you will be facing on Saturday, they're also the top 3 ever. You know, so we're really a hot spot for hurdling, and to you know, go to the Worlds next year and the Olympics this year, you know, I'd be lining up against these guys and having to beat them to get to the quarterfinals, semi-finals and finals. So yeah, it's the same thing.
Thank you very much to Julz Adeniran for speaking to us today, and we wish him all the best in his future ambition at Olympics and World Championships.